Have you ever wondered why sometimes you feel tired even when you haven't done much? Why you feel heavy inside even though nothing outside is weighing you down? The truth is, your mind is carrying battles you don't even see. And the most dangerous enemies are the ones hiding inside. Doubt is not something that walks into your life loudly, waving its hands and demanding attention. If it did, you would recognize it and push it aside. Instead, doubt enters quietly. It is soft, subtle, almost like a whisper in the corner of your mind. It doesn't come with force, but with suggestion. It asks gentle questions. Are you really ready for this? Are you sure you're capable? What if you make a mistake? And because these questions sound reasonable, you listen. At first, it seems harmless, but the longer you listen, the more those whispers shape your choices. Think of a time when you had an idea, a spark of inspiration, maybe even excitement. In that moment, your energy rises, your heart beats faster, and you can almost see the possibility of success. But then, just before you act, doubt steps in. It doesn't tell you you cannot do this. Instead, it says maybe later, maybe when you're more prepared, maybe when you have more money, more experience, more support. And so you wait, the idea fades, the moment passes, and what was once a spark turns to ash. That is the true power of doubt, not in destroying your dreams directly, but in delaying them until they disappear. Doubt disguises itself in many forms. Sometimes it wears the mask of caution. You think you are just being careful, waiting for the right time. But how often does the right time ever appear? Other times, it dresses as logic. You tell yourself, I need to think this through more. I need to make sure it's perfect before I begin. And so you polish and plan, but never take the first step. Doubt convinces you that you are protecting yourself from failure, but in reality, you are protecting yourself from growth. Because growth only happens when you step into the unknown. Consider this: the most successful people in history, inventors, leaders, creators, were not free of doubt. They simply chose not to let it stop them. Thomas Edison did not know if the light bulb would work after hundreds of failures. Writers, artists, and entrepreneurs all wrestle with uncertainty. But instead of waiting for the feeling of doubt to disappear, they acted alongside it. This is the hidden truth about courage. It doesn't come in the absence of doubt, but in the presence of it. Courage is when you move forward even while doubt walks beside you. And here's what makes doubt even more dangerous. It grows stronger the longer you feed it. The more you sit with those whispered questions, the more believable they sound. You're not ready. Others are better than you. What if you fail? Slowly, these whispers become your inner voice, and you can no longer tell the difference between doubt and truth. The result is paralysis, being stuck in the same place, watching life move forward without you. You become a spectator of your own potential, never stepping fully into it, because you allowed doubt to sit in the driver's seat. But notice this: doubt loses its power the moment you act. Think about the last time you finally did something you were afraid of, maybe speaking in front of people, starting a new project, or making a difficult decision. Before you began, doubt was loud, but once you took action, once you moved your body, spoke the words, or sent the message, doubt started to fade. Action is like light to the shadow of doubt. It cannot survive where there is movement. This is why the antidote to doubt is not more thinking, not more planning, not more waiting. The antidote is action, however small. One step is enough to weaken the whisper. So the question is not, do I have doubt? Everyone does. The real question is, what do I do when doubt appears? Do I feed it by listening, or do I silence it by acting? Because doubt is not an enemy you defeat once. It is an enemy that will return again and again, testing your strength. Each time you act in spite of it, you build resilience. Each time you delay, you give it more control. The choice is always yours to be a servant of your doubt or a master of your courage. Comparison is one of the most silent enemies of the mind. It creeps in not when you're weak, but often when you're doing well. You achieve something, maybe you finish a project, reach a milestone, or simply feel content. For a moment, you're proud of yourself. But then you look around, you see someone else who has gone further, someone who seems younger, smarter, or more successful, and just like that, the joy you felt disappears. You don't even celebrate your achievement anymore because in comparison, it suddenly feels too small. The shadow of comparison doesn't announce itself. It hides in little moments, scrolling through your phone and seeing a friend on vacation, a colleague getting promoted, or someone else's life looking perfect. You tell yourself, I should be there by now. Why am I not doing enough? And notice what happens. You're no longer living your life. You're measuring it against someone else's highlight reel. The focus shifts from what you're building to what you're lacking. That shift is poisonous because it blinds you to your own progress. What makes comparison so dangerous is that it is never fair. You never compare everything, you only compare parts. You compare your struggle to someone's success, your behind, the scenes to their final performance. Imagine looking at a finished painting and then criticizing your own sketch because it doesn't look the same. Of course it doesn't. You're still in the process of creating, but the mind forgets this truth, and in the shadow of comparison, you feel smaller than you truly are. Let me give you an image. Imagine a flower in a garden. There's a rose, and next to it, a sunflower. Now, the rose never looks at the sunflower and says, "You're taller than me, I must be worthless." And the sunflower never looks at the rose and says, "You're more beautiful than me, I must not matter." They simply bloom, each in their own way, in their own time. But human beings, unlike flowers, constantly measure themselves against others. And in that measurement, they lose sight of their own uniqueness. The tragedy of comparison is that it convinces you to abandon your own growth while trying to copy someone else's path. The truth is, comparison kills joy, but it also kills focus. When you're busy looking left and right, you forget to look ahead. Your energy is no longer directed at building your strengths or learning from your weaknesses. Instead, it's wasted on envy, self-doubt, and frustration. Think about it. How many hours have people lost scrolling through other people's lives instead of investing in their own? The shadow of comparison steals time and attention, the two most valuable currencies of life. And here is something important. Comparison can never be satisfied. Even if you reach a certain level, there will always be someone ahead of you, someone with more, someone doing better. If your happiness depends on being ahead of others, you will always be chasing a moving target. The race never ends. That's why the only meaningful comparison is with yourself. Ask, am I growing compared to yesterday? Am I learning compared to last year? Am I moving closer to the person I want to become? This is the kind of comparison that gives energy instead of draining it. So the practice is simple but powerful. When you catch yourself comparing, pause. Remind yourself that everyone has their own lane. Your journey is not supposed to look like theirs. Your timeline is not supposed to match theirs. Just like two seeds planted in the ground, one may sprout in days, the other may take months, but both still grow into strong trees. Your task is not to compete with the tree next to you, but to water your own roots. The shadow of comparison disappears when you start appreciating your own path. Gratitude is the antidote. Every time you remind yourself of what you have, your abilities, your lessons, your progress, the grip of comparison weakens. You begin to see that you already carry enough, you already are enough, and that your path, though different, has its own beauty. The question is not, am I better than them? The real question is, am I becoming better than I was? Overthinking is a strange thing. On the surface, it feels useful. It feels as if you are solving problems, preparing for challenges, and protecting yourself from mistakes. The mind says, if I think about it a little longer, I'll find the perfect solution. If I analyze it from every angle, I'll be safe. But the truth is, overthinking doesn't create clarity, it creates confusion. It doesn't bring certainty, it creates paralysis. And the more you indulge in it, the less you move forward in life. Imagine this. You're standing in front of a river wanting to cross. You could take a step and begin moving toward the other side. Or you could stand there thinking, what if the water is too deep? What if I slip? What if I should wait for a bridge? What if there are better rivers to cross? With each thought, the step becomes harder. Hours pass, then days, and in some cases, years. Meanwhile, the river flows, life moves on, and you remain on the same shore. This is the trap of overthinking, endless motion inside your mind, but no movement in your life. The problem with overthinking is not thinking itself. Thinking is a gift, a powerful tool of human intelligence. The problem is when thinking becomes excessive, when it turns into worry and rumination. You start replaying old conversations, analyzing what you should have said, or you begin rehearsing the future, imagining every possible outcome, from the best to the worst. The mind keeps spinning, but nothing actually changes. You can't fix the past, and you can't live in a future that hasn't arrived. Overthinking robs you of the only place where life happens, the present moment. Think of the countless decisions that were delayed, the opportunities you never took, the words you never spoke, the actions you never made simply because you were thinking too much. Maybe you wanted to start a project, but you kept wondering if it would succeed. Maybe you wanted to reach out to someone, but you thought about how they might respond. Maybe you wanted to change your path, but you drowned in what-ifs. Overthinking pretends to keep you safe, but in reality, it keeps you stuck. And being stuck, in the long run, is far more dangerous than making a mistake. Here's the irony. Clarity doesn't come from more thinking. It comes from action. Think about when you've been confused about something, maybe a skill you wanted to learn or a path you wanted to take. Before starting, your mind was full of questions, but once you took the first step, once you tried, suddenly you had answers. Experience gave you the clarity that thought alone could not. Action cuts through overthinking like light cuts through darkness. The moment you move, the questions that once felt so heavy begin to dissolve. But how do you escape the trap? The first step is awareness. You must notice when your thoughts are no longer helpful, when you are not thinking to solve, but thinking to delay. A simple question helps. Is this thought bringing me closer to action or further away? If it's the latter, then it's overthinking. The second step is grounding yourself. Instead of trying to solve everything in your head, bring your attention to the present. Breathe, feel your body, focus on the next small step, not the entire staircase. You don't need to know the whole path before you begin. You only need to know the first move, and here lies the deeper truth. Overthinking is fueled by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. If you dig beneath the endless thoughts, you will find fear sitting quietly at the core. The mind thinks, if I just plan enough, I can eliminate the risk. But life has no guarantees. No amount of thinking can erase uncertainty. The choice, then, is simple: remain trapped in endless analysis or embrace uncertainty and move anyway. When you understand this, you begin to see overthinking for what it is, not a sign of intelligence, but a prison built from fear. And like any prison, the way out is not to decorate the walls with more thoughts, but to step outside, to take action, however imperfect, and trust that clarity will come along the way. Every one of us carries stories inside. Some of these stories are beautiful moments of joy, achievements, times when we felt alive. But many of the stories we hold on to are heavy. They are about failures, betrayals, mistakes, and wounds we never allowed to heal. These stories become like invisible weights we carry everywhere we go. They shape how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, and how we approach the future. And the most dangerous part, often we don't even realize how much power we've given to them. Think back for a moment. Perhaps you remember a time when you tried something new and it didn't work out. Maybe you stood in front of others and your words got stuck. Maybe you opened your heart only to be hurt. Maybe you attempted a dream and it failed. In that moment, the experience ended, but the story began. The mind repeated it. I'm not good at this. I can't trust people. I'm not capable. And because the mind repeated it often enough, it became a belief. That belief became part of your identity. This is how past stories chain us, not by what happened, but by what we tell ourselves about what happened. These stories are not facts. Facts are simple. I failed once. I was rejected once. I made a mistake once. But stories are interpretations. I always fail. People always reject me. I'll never succeed. The story exaggerates, generalizes, and repeats. And because we keep telling it, we live inside it. We stop seeing new possibilities because the old story is already written in our minds. It's like wearing glasses with scratched lenses. No matter what you look at, you see through the damage. The weight of past stories becomes most visible when opportunities arise. Imagine someone offers you a chance to speak, to lead, or to love again. But instead of seeing the new moment for what it is, you see it through the old lens. Last time I spoke, I failed. Last time I trusted, I was betrayed. Last time I tried, I was rejected. The present becomes contaminated by the past. And in this way, you don't just carry your stories, you relive them. The enemy here is not your memory, but your attachment to it. But here's the truth. The past can explain you, but it does not define you. The past is a teacher, not a prison. Every experience, no matter how painful, holds a lesson. If you failed, perhaps the lesson was resilience. If you were rejected, perhaps the lesson was self-worth. If you were betrayed, perhaps the lesson was discernment. The problem is not that the past happened. The problem is when we stop at the pain and never move to the lesson. Pain is inevitable. Carrying it forever is a choice. So how do you release the weight of past stories? You don't erase them, that's impossible. You rewrite them. Instead of saying, I failed, so I am a failure, you say, I failed, so I learned what doesn't work. Instead of saying, I was betrayed, so I can't trust, you say, I was betrayed, so I now know the value of trust and boundaries. The story shifts from victimhood to wisdom, and when the story shifts, the weight begins to lift. Imagine for a moment your life as a book. Every chapter is already written: childhood, youth, mistakes, successes. But the book isn't finished yet. You are still holding the pen. The danger is thinking that the old chapters dictate how the new ones must unfold. They don't. Just because a character fell in chapter 3 doesn't mean they cannot rise in chapter 4. Just because the story was dark in the middle doesn't mean it cannot end in light. But this will only happen if you recognize that you are not just the reader of your story, you are also the author. And here lies the ultimate freedom. Once you realize the past is not a cage but a classroom, you begin to walk lighter. You stop dragging old chains into new days. You see the present for what it is: fresh, open, unshaped. Yes, the past explains how you arrived here, but it does not dictate where you can go. The weight of past stories becomes lighter the moment you decide to carry the lessons and leave the scars behind. The mind loves control. It craves certainty, order, and predictability. It wants to know what will happen tomorrow, how things will unfold, and what outcomes it can guarantee. At first, this seems like strength to be prepared, to be organized, to be in charge, but slowly you begin to notice something. No matter how much you try to control, life refuses to obey. Plans change, people change, the unexpected arrives. And the more tightly you hold on, the more frustrated, anxious, and exhausted you become. This is the illusion of control, believing you can master life by gripping it, when in truth, life flows like water, always slipping through your fingers. Think of a time when things didn't go your way. Maybe you planned a perfect day, but the weather ruined it. Maybe you invested time into a relationship only for the other person to walk away. Maybe you worked hard for an opportunity, but someone else was chosen. In those moments, you may have felt powerless, angry, or even betrayed by life itself. But notice what was truly causing the suffering. Was it the event, or was it your resistance to it? The weather wasn't the enemy. The person's choice wasn't the enemy. The rejection wasn't the enemy. The enemy was the belief, this should not have happened. It must have gone my way. That belief, not reality itself, created the pain. The illusion of control shows up everywhere. We try to control how others see us, how they treat us, what they say about us. We try to control outcomes, forcing results instead of letting them grow naturally. We even try to control time, rushing through the present to get to the future faster. And yet, the harder we try, the more tension we create. Control becomes like a rope you hold tightly in your hands. The tighter you pull, the more it burns. The more you grip, the more you suffer. Here's the paradox: the things we can control, we often neglect. And the things we cannot control, we obsess over. We can control our attitude, but we focus on others' opinions. We can control our actions, but we worry about outcomes. We can control our effort, but we waste energy fearing failure. This misplacement is what drains our energy. Imagine pouring water into a bucket full of holes. No matter how much you add, it keeps leaking. In the same way, no matter how much energy you spend trying to control the uncontrollable, it keeps slipping away. Freedom comes when you shift your attention, when you stop trying to control what you cannot and instead master what you can. You cannot control the storm, but you can adjust your sails. You cannot control people, but you can choose how you respond. You cannot control outcomes, but you can give your best effort. This is not weakness, it is wisdom, because wisdom understands that life is not about bending reality to your will. It is about moving in harmony with it. Consider water flowing down a mountain. If there's a rock in its path, it doesn't stop and argue. It doesn't demand that the rock move. It flows around it, over it, or under it. It adapts, and in that adaptation, it continues moving forward. This is the lesson for us. Flexibility is strength. When you stop fighting reality, you conserve your energy for what truly matters. Peace begins not when life bends to your demands, but when you bend gracefully with life. And here lies the deeper truth. Control was never real in the first place. It was only ever an illusion. You never controlled what people thought. You never controlled every outcome. You never controlled the future. You only controlled yourself, your thoughts, your words, your actions, your choices. And when you realize this, you stop wasting energy on the impossible, and you begin to focus on the possible. The illusion of control fades when you embrace uncertainty. Life is not meant to be predictable. Its unpredictability is what gives it beauty. If everything were known, there would be no wonder, no discovery, no growth. The unknown is not your enemy, it is your teacher. And when you accept this, you stop resisting change and start flowing with it. That flow, that acceptance, is where true peace is found. Awareness is a quiet power. It does not shout, it does not force, it does not demand. But when it arrives, everything changes. Imagine walking in a dark room filled with obstacles. You bump into chairs, trip over tables, and bruise yourself against unseen edges. The room feels hostile, dangerous. But the moment you switch on the light, nothing in the room changes except your awareness. Suddenly, you see clearly, you can move freely. The same room that once felt like a trap becomes a space you can navigate with ease. That is the power of awareness. It doesn't remove the enemies of the mind, but it makes them visible. And once they are visible, they lose their power over you. Think of the 5 hidden enemies we have explored: doubt, comparison, overthinking, past stories, and the illusion of control. Each one works best in the shadows. Doubt whispers when you're not paying attention. Comparison creeps in when you're distracted. Overthinking grows when you're caught in loops of fear. Past stories weigh you down when you forget they're only stories. And the illusion of control grips you when you don't realize how little you truly command. But the moment you see them for what they are, you step outside of their influence. It's like waking from a dream you didn't know you were having. Awareness does not mean the enemies disappear. Doubt will still whisper, comparison will still tempt, overthinking will still try to pull you in, past stories will still echo, and life will still test your need for control. But when you are aware, you catch them in the act. Instead of being swept away, you pause and say, "Ah, this is doubt, I see you. This is comparison, I recognize you. This is just my old story speaking again. This is me trying to control the uncontrollable." And with that recognition, the spell breaks. You are no longer a prisoner of your mind. You become its observer. This awareness is like stepping back from a river. When you're in the river, the current drags you. You get pulled by the force of every thought, every emotion, every fear. But when you step back onto the riverbank, you see the water flow without being swept away by it. Thoughts still come, emotions still rise, stories still appear, but you are no longer drowning in them. You watch, you choose, you decide when to step in and when to stay still. That distance, that perspective is the gift of awareness. And here is the profound thing. Awareness is always available. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to buy it. You don't even need to travel to find it. It is already within you, waiting for you to pause, to breathe, to notice. The challenge is not accessing awareness, but remembering it in the moments you need it most. In the heat of doubt, in the grip of comparison, in the spiral of overthinking, you forget. The practice, then, is not perfection but remembrance, to keep returning again and again to that place of clarity. When you live with awareness, life feels lighter. Challenges still come, but they no longer crush you. Enemies still appear, but they no longer define you. Awareness gives you space to choose courage over doubt, gratitude over comparison, action over overthinking, wisdom over past stories, and acceptance over control. With space, you respond instead of react. You create instead of repeat. You live instead of merely survive. The moment of awareness is the turning point in every journey. It is the difference between living unconsciously at the mercy of hidden enemies and living consciously as the master of your mind. The enemies do not vanish, but their power fades when you learn to see, and in that seeing, you awaken to the truth. The real battle was never outside. It was always inside, and the light of awareness is the weapon you've carried all along. So, my friends, the real battle is not fought outside, but within. The most dangerous enemies are not those you can see with your eyes, but those that whisper silently inside your mind. Doubt, distraction, comparison, fear, and pride. They disguise themselves as part of your thinking, part of your daily life. But the truth is, they steal your focus, your peace, and your potential. The key is awareness. When you begin to recognize these enemies, you take away their strength. You stop reacting blindly and start choosing consciously. That is how you regain control over your mind, and when the mind is clear, the path forward is always clear. Ask yourself who is in control right now, me or my hidden enemy. If you can answer this honestly each day, you will already be living with more freedom than most people ever experience. Remember, Life is not about removing challenges, it's about mastering yourself in the face of them. And once you conquer the hidden enemies of your mind, you discover the greatest ally you've ever had yourself.